All right, welcome everyone. If you've just joined us or are joining us, please chuck your name, greet everyone in the chat box. I need you to find that chat box and just say what industry you're in so we get a sense of that as we go through today. I've got Karina and Chris and Stephen and Uli on the call today, and we'll open up the panel for questions and things at the end. I will look to finish on time today, but I've gone over by a couple of minutes on my rehearsals, so might be just a couple of minutes after one when we finish up, and then we'll have 10 minutes or 15 minutes of questioning. Welcome back, Michelle. Right, decision-making excellence. So today's webinar is a special one because I think at the moment we're faced again with a whole bunch of decisions that we need to make. Lots going on in the environment, lots of information coming at us from the media, lots of tough decisions to make as business leaders. And so what I want to do today is go through some practical tools, some practical frameworks, some storytelling, and help you get a sense of things that you can bring to your arsenal to help you make better decisions. So welcome those of you who are still just joining us. Today's webinar will be a bit of fun. Some of you have seen me present before. Some of you have seen some of the tools and frameworks here in these slides. So if you know some of the answers prior, please don't chuck them in the chat. But the rest of you, I'll get you to engage with me in the chat box. So let's get started. So what you need at your desk is pen and paper. I am going to get you to do some stuff where you're writing things down and making notes, and I'm going to take you through some processes to help you literally finish at the end of today with a decision made. You're going to need coffee because, as you can probably already tell, I talk really fast and I go really fast, and I have 400 slides to get through in 30 minutes or something just shy of that. So we're going to go quickly. Make sure you are awake and can keep up. I want you to open your chat box. I want you to find the thumbs up button and give me a thumbs up to start with. Everyone online, hit the thumbs up button and give me a thumbs up. That way I know that you are engaging with me, and I'm going to get you to vote on a few things as we go through today. So today's going to be fun. I'm going to deliver some real knowledge, but we're also going to engage with each other in the chat box and learn and grow from each other as well, because you're all business people and you all have different perspectives and opinions. So let's have some fun together. Are we ready? We are about to start, and we're going to start a bit differently. You might feel like a bit of a goose, particularly if you are in an office where other people can see you, but I need you to bear with me. The first exercise of today. I would like you, please, to close your eyes. You might feel funny doing so, but please trust me on this. Close your eyes. It's going to be a bit different. I want you to plant your feet on the ground, flat on the ground, whether you're standing or sitting, I don't mind, but plant your feet on the ground so that they feel stable on the ground. I want your eyes shut, and I want them to keep shut. Now, imagine you're standing with your back against a concrete wall. It is cold concrete. You can feel the concrete through your back. And to your left, there is a doorway and a dark hallway, and you don't know what's at the end of that hallway. You may be a little bit worried at this stage about what is going to happen next. So you look down at your hands. So in your mind's eye right now, with your eyes shut, look down at your hands, feel your feet planted on the ground, and realize that you are holding a machine gun. And you are about to go through that doorway, into that dark hallway, into the unknown with a machine gun. Now, if you check in with your body right now, even with that short little exercise, your heart rate might be slightly up. Your hands might be a little bit clammy, or they might feel a little bit nervous. You might feel like your body chemistry has changed. I want you to open your eyes now. This is the doorway that you were going to walk through. Every single year, the Navy SEALs have a competition called Clear the Building. It is a time trial where SEAL Team 1 competes with SEAL Team 3 and SEAL Team 6 to see who can clear the building the fastest. Now, in that building are terrorists, hostages, and civilians. And so each team has their own go at getting in there and clearing the building. And what they find with newer teams is that the newer teams do the worst because they rush in. And this is what I want you to think about today. What happens when a SEAL team rushes into a building, into an unknown scenario in a paintball setting? You've got terrorists who are looking to fight back. You can't see, you don't have a sense of the landscape. What the SEALs are doing is they're going down this hallway into this building and they're trying to get a sense of what's happening in front of them. They're building context so that they can make decisions quickly as they move along. Now, the experienced SEAL teams, the ones that hold the record, typically go in there and start slower and get a sense of that context and then speed up as they go through the trial. Those that rush in typically have a confluence of events where one of the SEAL team members will get hit, and so they're down one man, but actually they're down two, because now the teammate, with the rule in the military, never leave one of your own behind, has to go back, get that person, carry them to safely, and then rejoin the team. And so the series of events get worse and worse and worse as it goes along from having rushed into the beginning of the decision. So the rule with the Navy SEALs is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And Tanya, I saw you on the call. I know I've drilled this with you a number of times. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's the rule of the Navy SEALs. What this enables you to do is get a sense of the context and build context as you move through a scenario. So we're going to keep that in mind today as we go through this webinar. So write that down. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That's the first lesson for today that we're going to take with us as we look to make these business decisions together. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, and the racing track is a great analogy for that. First piece of work, you've got your pen and paper. Please write down, what was the biggest decision you've ever made? Write it down on your piece of paper. Was it getting married? Was it having kids? Was it starting a business? Was it buying a business? Selling a business? Was it firing someone that you really liked? Think about the biggest decision you've ever made in business or personal. Write it down now. Now think, how did I feel when I was making that decision? Was I excited? Was I nervous? Was I afraid? Was I worried? Was I clear-headed? Think about how you felt while you were making that decision. And now I want you to think, how did you make that decision? Did you follow some kind of process or way that you typically make decisions? Did you use decision-making tools? Did you have a framework that you followed? Was there a process that you followed? How did you go about making that decision? So just reflect on that for a moment. Biggest decision you've ever made. How did you feel making it? And how did you make that decision? I want you to write that down. I'm going to ask you to share some things in the chat box today. That one's not one of them. This is a personal one for you. The next one that we're going to talk about, I will get you to share in a moment. So I want you to write down what's an important business decision that you're facing right now. Just one. If there's one important business decision that you're facing right now, we're going to make that decision today. So write it down at the top of your piece of paper where you can come back to it and refer to it. And as we write down different tools and things as we go along, I'm going to keep drawing you back to this so that you can think about it and think about how you might apply them. So give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you've all written down the important business decision that you are going to make at the end of this session. Yes, lots of thumbs up happening. Awesome. We will keep going. So the year was 1913. Henry Ford was leading perhaps the most successful company in the world at that time. Certainly from my research, they seemed to be top 5. They were on track to be one of the first billion-dollar companies. Everything was successful. Everything was great. It was similar to the Tesla story today. Being a part of it was exciting. Working for Ford was exciting. They were the media darling. But Henry had a problem. He had already doubled his workforce. He had already doubled his capacity, not once, but twice, and put in his new assembly line process. And still, they were having capacity issues. He was a victim of his own success. So the problem and the decision that he had to make was not a bad one, it was a positive one. However, the symptom of that success was staff turnover had been the highest it had ever been. Why? You're a part of the modern day equivalent of Tesla. You're in a media darling company. It's successful, it's growing, your future's secured, and yet staff turnover was the highest it had ever been. Why? Because they changed the nature of the work. The assembly line meant menial tasks. And the people that joined the company initially were mechanics who liked to build things with their hands. So suddenly the job that they were doing has changed, and all of the creativity and whatnot is taken out of it, so they no longer enjoy it. So what was their option? He had to decide whether or not to double his entire workforce's pay to maintain the productivity and improve the lives of his workers. Now, every business owner on the call right now that has their team on the call is wishing that I would shut up, but we're going to have a fun little exercise, a fun little discussion here. Should he double his entire workforce's pay? Now, his logic was they might not enjoy the work as much, but at least they can enjoy their personal lives and they'll be better off and they'll be looking after their family. So that's the decision that he had to make. Now, when you were making a decision like that, let's say you were doing the same thing, what's at stake here? This is not as flippant and an easy decision as you might think. So the pay at the time was $2.50 for a week's work. And right now, the business owners are cheering for me again. But that's doubling your pay to $5 a week, $2.50 to $5 or thereabouts. If you make this decision and get it wrong, thousands of people's jobs are on the line. If this business goes under, thousands of families are impacted. So it's not a small decision. How would you go about making that decision? So the process that Ford followed was he got rigorous financial analysis and forecasting. They ran the numbers until they couldn't stand to look at them anymore to see what the impact of capacity and retention of people would mean for the business. He had a boardroom table with 12 senior executives around it, fiercely debating this decision several times. He engaged one of the world's most expensive external consultants to come in and advise, research, guide, do analysis, and help them work through and debate this decision. So what process would you follow to make this decision? So you've got to make the decision whether or not to double the pay of everyone in the company. How do you make that decision? Is there some kind of method or tool that you would use in addition to what Ford used that would help you get comfortable making that decision? And if there's a method that you think was missing from his list, please chuck it in the chat box. We'd all love to hear from it. So he did financial analysis. He consulted with his senior leadership team and he engaged an external advisor. That is literally what he did to make this decision. If you've got any other methods that you would use, please chuck them in the chat box. So, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. So, through making this decision, he could fail. Did he talk to the workers? Great question. Consultation with the team? Great question. Great question. Anecdotal analysis. Cool. Great points, people. So, here we go. What was his decision? Did he double everyone's pay, or did the research and process that he went through say no? Put your answer in the chat box. Give me a thumbs up if you think yes, he did it. Give me a thumbs down if you think he didn't. Doubling his entire workforce of thousands of people's pay. Thumbs up if you think he did, thumbs down if you think he didn't. Couple of thumbs down. Couple of thumbs up, or more thumbs down by the looks of it. We're voting no from what I can see. No, 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 no. All you business owners staking your claim, eh? Check this out. 1914, he did it. We believe in making 20,000 men prosperous and contented rather than follow the plan of making a few slave drivers and our establishment millionaires. Now, they did all become millionaires, and it did become $1 billion company, and he did double everyone's pay. Again, all the business owners on the call are saying, shut up, Logan, stop with this. But there was a positive unintended consequence of having done that. by making his people more wealthy, they were able to afford the car as well. And so he actually enabled average working people into a car for the common man, creating a new category, increasing his sales, and further promoting the Ford brand around the world. So that's an interesting story there, where you guys already uncovered a couple of other techniques that you would have used, consultation with workers and whatnot. So what I want to do now is I want to start to move towards tools. What are some of the tools and frameworks you can use? There'll be a couple more stories in here, but we're going to start. I'm going to point you at some resources. So have your pens ready so you can write down the names of the books and authors and thinkers that I've researched. And we'll see if we can start giving you some tools for that decision. So go look again at the decision that you've written down that you need to make. You've got that in front of you. Are you going to make that decision today? What are the tools that you need to do so? Let's get into it. So to start with, in the chat box, please give your answer. I probably gave it away in the invite, but what is the worst decision-making tool known to man, and also the most common? What is the worst decision-making tool? What is the tool that most people use to help them make a decision? Chuck your answer in the chat box, please. Voting. Close. Flip a coin. Flip a coin's a good one. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Pros and cons, our feelings, instinct and emotion, all actually really important. We'll cover that shortly. Not consulting anyone. Good. SWOT. Thank you, Janine. All right. The truth is the pro-con list. Alcohol. Come on, Tristan. Nothing wrong with a good beer. Pro and con list is actually the worst. And Michael, yes, because what does the pro and con list do? Validates your own opinion. Confirmation bias is what that tool suffers from. You write down the pros, you write down the cons, but of course, if there's an outcome you want, whether or not it's the better outcome for you, you'll tend to weight the column to support the decision that you think you want, or that feels easier to make. So what can we do with a pro-con list? Is it a waste of time? Should we stop doing it and ditch it altogether? Well, what if we just added some other pieces to it? So what if we added a scoring and a weighting, right? What if we added a scoring and a weighting? Or what if we had somebody else meet with us to brainstorm other criteria that we could add to those columns? Or what if we made the two columns and then sought a second opinion and defended the column that we made and debated it? Or what if we took each of those criteria in each area and looked for insights from each and weighed up what's the implication of that on the outcome, and then even score those insights and implications and give those a weighting. So now you've added a bunch of criteria to a pro-con list, which makes it a more effective tool. So if you're someone that likes a pro-con list, giving you some things you can do to improve it, but I'm going to show you some better resources in a moment. So there's a book called How to Decide by Annie Duke, and I recommend you either get the book, or there is a shortened PDF summary that you can find on Google. She's got some good tools. The book is more about personal decision making. I found there's a few good things that you can apply to business, but one of the concepts that she talks about that's really interesting in reading it was the range of outcomes. How do you position yourself while making a decision to have a range of outcomes that are possible, that are more favorable? And that's something that I like to think about in business. How do we position ourselves to have a better range of outcomes that are probable? So we're going to dig into that a little bit more too. Firstly, I want to ask, how do you make decisions? You can chuck it in the chat box or write it down on your piece of paper. Are you somebody who seems careless and seems to make decisions too fast? Or are you somebody that seems indecisive and seems to make decisions too slow? Great self-awareness. Everybody's quick to answer, I'm slow or I'm fast. Interesting. Indecisive. Too fast, Annie. Fast, Blair. Interesting. Okay. Now reflect on yourself again. So for Scott, it depends. Okay. Would you rather work for a leader that seems careless or seems indecisive? Slower response in the chat box there. Neither. Good answer, Animesh. Fearless. See, it's interesting, isn't it? When you reflect on that and think about the way that you make decisions, whether you make them too slow, whether you make them too fast, what are your people thinking? Are they looking to you as a leader to make decisions and wondering whether you're making them too slowly, or are they wondering whether you're going too fast? And what kind of confidence is that giving them? So the question now, the challenge to you, with your pen, write down on your paper, how might you consciously alter your approach? Do you need to speed up or do you need to slow down? Just for yourself, write down what you think you need to do. Speed up or slow down. So interestingly, if you're an organization that runs disc profiling or the equivalent, there's heaps of them that are similar. But if you're an organization that runs the disc profiling across your teams, what's interesting is on the right side of the quadrant here, the dominance and influence tends to be faster decision makers. And if you're on the left side of the quadrant here, you tend to be slower decision makers. And so if you know your disc profile, you might be giggling to yourself right now because you know which one you are, and it will probably validate as true. But then what you can do is look at your organization and look to other people who are in a different area of the quadrant to you and consult them on the decision that you're making and engage them in the process to help you make it. So write down on your piece of paper, do you need to slow down or speed up? And we'll talk about how we might be able to do that. So before you make a decision, what are some of the things that you might want to think about? You want to know what it means for you. What's the impact for you? How are you going to feel about it? What's the outcome that you think you want? If you're not clear on that, then that's an issue to begin with. And then what's the probability of getting the outcome that you want? What's your risk profile like? Are you a high risk person, low risk person? What's the probability of getting the outcome? These are the three things that you need to think about before you go into a process of making a decision. What does it mean for you? What is the outcome that you want? What's the probability of you getting the outcome that you want? Then we want to understand, is this a big decision or is this a small decision? Is this a sheep in wolf's clothing? And how do you know? How do you know if you're losing sleep at night over a small decision? So first of all, is this a small decision disguised as a big decision? One of the ways that you can unpack that is to go, a week after I've made this decision, how am I going to feel? Or 6 months, or a year, or 10 years. How am I going to feel about this decision in a longer time frame? The longer the time frame, the less you're going to care about it, then it's probably on the smaller side of a decision. If this decision option was the only option available to you, would you still be happy with it? Or would you rather have other options? And then what's the cost of quitting? So over time, if you've made this decision and you're leaning into it and you're going with it, what's the cost of quitting? Can you back out later? Then it's probably leaning more towards a bigger decision if the cost is higher. So the decision you've written at the top of your page, is it a sheep in wolf's clothing or is it a big decision that you're making? If it's a big decision you're making, what's the cost of quitting? Maybe what are a couple of other options that you might need to look at? Because the main thing, and I want to go back here to the cost of quitting. I said over time, what's the cost over time? This is one of the key takeaways that I want you to write down today. Time is the #1 thing you need to control in your decision-making process. Early on, don't dilly-dally around. Early on, take control of the timeline that you have to make that decision, particularly if it's a big decision. Buy yourself more time if you can. So write this down, take control of the timeline and use it to your advantage. Time is what will give you a better decision if you control it. If it happens to you and you find yourself under pressure late in the time continuum, you will tend to make a worse decision. So is it a small decision keeping you awake at night? If it's a small decision keeping you awake at night, that decision at the top of your page, I suggest you scratch it out and come up with a new decision, give that decision to someone else to make. Now, one of the methods for doing that, whilst comical and an entertaining looking slide, there's some really good logic behind it. I guess the first thing everybody notices is the difference between 2001 and the rest of them, the rest of the Steve Jobs. But Steve Jobs wore the same turtleneck, same jeans, and same sneakers every single day, day after day. Why? Because it was just another decision that he had to make. And if you're a leader in a business, which I would say everyone on this call is, if you're a leader, you have a lot of decisions to make. And what the small decisions do is take up bandwidth in your brain, which affects your ability to make the good big decisions effectively. So what you want to do is look across your life, look across your routine, look across the way that you work, and remove as many small decisions that are inconsequential as possible. Barack Obama wears the same color suit. One time he changed to, I think it was a tan-colored suit or something. Stephen, wasn't it a tan-colored suit that he changed to, and he got torn apart in the media? So yeah, it was cool. So remove the small decisions from your day so that you can free up mental bandwidth to make these big decisions. The big decisions are more important. So write that down. Remove as many small decisions from your day as possible. What you're going to eat, where you're going to go, which route you're going to take to work. All of these little decisions, plan them before the week, get them out of the way, and then spend your week making the decisions that matter. Thanks, Ashley. Now, we'll do a little checklist exercise here. So literally look at these bullet points as a checklist. And what I want you to do is mentally go through and give it a tick or a cross. Do you take the time to consider the decision? Tick or a cross. Are you using decision-making tools to self-check? Tick or a cross. Now, every time you write a cross in your brain, I want you to write that bullet point down, because that's an area that you need to look into. Do you utilize other people to sense check your choices? Tick or a cross. If it's a cross, write it down. Do you compile context for the decision, like the Navy SEALs, get a sense of things as you're going along? Data, information, opinion, perspectives. If not, write that down. Do you check with your intuition? Or someone said flip a coin. That's a great way to do it. One of the ways that you do it is you get the coin, you assign the binary answer to the heads and the tails, and then you flip the coin, and then you watch the face of the person who's trying to make the decision. And when it lands on the side that they didn't want, their face goes down, and you know that they wanted the other option or the other way around. That's a great way to check in with your intuition and sense what option you were hoping would work. Do you make a decision, or are you somebody that constantly just procrastinates? Not making a decision is making a decision. It's just not a good one. So are you someone that makes the decision? If it's a cross, write that down. Do you take action? If not, write that down. And then do you revise it as you go? If not, write that down. Now, for me, that's probably the one that I would write down. I forget to come back to the decisions I've made and weigh up whether they worked and panned out how we would have liked and whether we maximized them. So you must exercise critical thinking, not just gut feelings. Gut feelings are important. Critical thinking is just as important. What we actually need is a mix of the two. First of all, do you agree or disagree? Can you just make decisions with your gut, or should you use critical thinking? Chuck your answers in the chat box. Critical thinking or gut? Inclined to gut. So the gut's important. The gut, your intuition, is the sum of your experience. So that subconscious data that you are drawing on, which is helping you make that decision. But the critical thinking is data that you're collecting in the current to help you weigh up your decision. And actually using those both helps you arrive at a better decision. A lot of gut decision makers here. So a lot of people going with their intuition. So it sense that there's more context information that you can bring to your decision making. So Steve Jobs is somebody that says that intuition is a very powerful thing. He's a brilliant jerk, is what he's been known as. But he's also known as walking into a room full of engineers who have dissected an issue upside down, backwards, and back to front, and then throwing their ideas out and writing one line on a whiteboard, and it's changed the shape of the companies. So intuition is a very powerful thing, and we should check in with it and we should listen to it, but we also want to collect that data and compare the two to help us make a better decision. So what happened was Apple was a hugely successful company. As it grew, obviously it put in a board structure, as you do when a company gets that big and successful. And then they found that Steve was getting more and more difficult to manage, getting offside with a lot of the staff. And I think there was even some cases of accusations of bullying. And so that brilliant jerk profile where he's super good at his job, but also difficult to work with, they decided was untenable, so they let him go. The profits and performance of the company declined really quickly, and they were forced to make a decision whether or not to hire him back. And as we know from history, they did. How would you go about making that decision? Just on your piece of paper, write it down. How do you make the decision whether or not to hire back a brilliant jerk? Great performer. Wasn't easy to work with. How would you make that decision? Good question, Nico. Mate, if you can drop that into the Q&A, that question you've just asked, drop that into the Q&A and the panel will respond to that at the end. It's a great question. So Jeff Bezos says you should probably make the decision with around 70% of the information that you wish you had. I wish he had used maybe 70% more of the information he had, not to make a phallic-shaped rocket, but there you go. Nico, that's part of your answer there. 70% of the information, not the 100%. But I've got an interesting question for you about Amazon. Why would a meeting at Amazon start with 20 minutes of deafening silence? Why would a meeting at Amazon start with 20 minutes of deafening silence? Think on that. Thinking time, Boyd, maybe. What it was Amazon passed a rule that PowerPoint presentations are not allowed. I get the irony, I do. PowerPoint presentations no longer allowed at Amazon. Why? On the right, you've got a marketer, well-dressed with a good haircut, very good at PowerPoint, great at design, can succinctly put things into a sentence. It sounds great. On the left, you've got an engineer, deep thinker, well-researched, lots of thought and effort gone into an idea. And what would happen is these different executives would pitch the ideas and the projects that Amazon should take on at board level after they've passed the initial business case. And what would happen is the marketers would keep winning because their slides looked better and they were better communicators. And then they did a retrospective on the projects that succeeded versus those that didn't. And they found that the engineers' projects were the ones that succeeded most often and had the best payoff. And they figured out that it was because the convincing PowerPoints made it feel like the better decision, but it wasn't the better decision. So they ditched PowerPoint and instead developed what they called the 6-pager. The 6-pager is a business case that gets the core argument, the core problem, the core tenets that you want to focus on, some financial analysis, team analysis, all of the things that is required for the project. And you have to put the 6-pager and only 6 pages together before the meeting, and then everyone reads it in the meeting. They spend 20 minutes first reading the 6 pages, so they're all up to date, current, and read it. Then they spend 20 minutes asking questions to clarify the information in the 6-pager, and then they spend 20 minutes debating it. At the end of that 1-hour meeting, it's called a 6-pager meeting, they make the decision. So this is one of the tools that I'm going to make available for you today as a little very simple Word document framework that you can follow to help you make these decisions. Now we want to talk about who should make the decision. Who's making the decisions in your organization and at what level, and are the right people making these decisions? So level 1 decision, if it's the fate of the company, if this is a make or break decision, only 2 people could be responsible for that decision, the CEO or the CFO, the person at the top, person controlling the money. That's who's responsible for the future of the company. If it's a strategic decision with long-term implications, it's the C-suite, right? Your senior leadership team makes the strategic decisions. Tactical decisions are made by your middle managers. These are the medium-term implications. These are the people that you trust with the information that they've got in front of them to make the best decision that they can by the organization. The operational decisions are a level 3 decision. That's your frontline team. These are the people who are talking to your customers. They've got the information right there in front of them in real time. They're the best people to make operational decisions. So the first question is, are the right people making the right decisions in your business? On your piece of paper, write down the decision-making level that you need to investigate and make sure is working properly, that the right people are making the decisions. Do you need to look into level 1, level 2, or level 3? Are the right people in your business making the right decisions? Now, when you're empowering people to make decisions, we want to get to the top right of this quadrant, energy and innovation. Where it goes wrong is when there's a lack of trust from the leaders or where there's a lack of ownership from the team. The team need to show ownership, take ownership of the decisions that they're making and prove that over time. The leaders' trust needs to be absolute. People need to be allowed to make mistakes. If you have neither, you get micromanagement. If there's a lack of trust from the leader, you get abdication and failure from your team. They don't take ownership of the things that they're doing and they don't get done. And then you get lower productivity if they don't take ownership. So the team needs to opt in. It needs to be voluntary. They need to say, yes, I'm interested in contributing to this initiative that we've got on as a business. And then the leader needs to trust them to get on with it. Then you get energy and innovation. One of the self-checks as you're going through these decisions and you're going maybe leaning one way or another is you need to check in with your core values and your core purpose if you're somebody that's defined that. If it's in conflict with your core values or your core purpose, do not make that decision. You only get one chance to sell out your values. It's very difficult to get them back. So don't do it if it's in conflict with your core values or your core purpose. Now, Ray Dalio is one of the most successful investors in the world, has been for decades. He is responsible for investing billions of dollars of other people's money based on what he thinks is the best thing to invest in. And he's written a book called Principles. It's got about 900 pages. I don't think you need to read the whole thing. I've pulled what I think is the best tool in that book out and put it in one slide for you, which you can get at the end of today. And that is what he calls the decision-making triangle. Now, this was just an anecdotal story that he told that I turned into this kind of model when he talked about the process that he goes through when he's got a really big ticket decision to make is first, he thinks about the decision himself, makes the decision, and then makes a case as to why he's made that decision. Then he goes to the person on the bottom left and seeks out a person who he knows will have other ideas and alternatives that he hasn't thought of, and he'll present his decision to them and get their feedback. Then he goes to the person on the bottom right of the quadrant down here, and he will seek out the person who he knows will disagree with him and make a strong case as to why he shouldn't go that way. Then he goes away and sits on the decision, and then if he's still comfortable making it, he goes with that decision. I personally use this method, and I really, really like it because it does capture your bias, as one of you questioned earlier. Actually, the person that disagrees with you can sometimes really cause you to think quite differently. So this is a really great tool to employ if you've got a big decision you need to make. Find somebody who thinks differently to you and find somebody who you know will be courageous enough to disagree with you and make a good intellectual case. Another way that you can do this is using De Bono's 6 hats. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat box if you're familiar with this tool, and that way I can just quickly go through it so we don't run out of time. Cool, you're familiar. Here's the questions. How could we improve the decision-making process? That's the first question. Second question is, what's the data telling us? Third question, how will people feel? And that's an important one in the current times, given the decisions that you are making are likely going to have big impacts on the people that you're making these decisions for. What other alternatives can we think of? What could happen if it went really well? And what are the risks? The black hat, what could it cost us? If we can think about what could go really right, we could plan for it. If we can think about what can go really wrong, we can plan for it. So that's a great tool to utilize. And what you do is you literally get 6 people in a room and have each of them wear the hat and play that role. It's effective. It's an effective way to debate a decision. The Eisenhower matrix. Thumbs up in the chat box if you've seen this one before. Just give me a sense of it. So President Eisenhower, if it's good enough for a president, it's probably good enough for you. So a few of you have seen this tool before. So basically the urgent and important is to do now. On the right-hand side, what I believe is really important is the stuff that if it's important to do, then it's important that you schedule it in and block out that time to do it. But what I wanted to talk about today is similar to the Steve Jobs slide. It's actually the eliminate box, the delete box. Don't underestimate the power of elimination, getting as much off your plate as possible that you don't need to be doing if you're a leader. Essentialism is a great book to read on that. If you're a leader, there's a lot of stuff on your to-do list right now that you probably shouldn't be doing. It's taking up mental bandwidth and it's taking up time that you could better utilize for the other bigger things that you need to do. So elimination, eliminate as many things from your to-do list as you can. Write down those the 4 bullet points on the left, write down the one that you typically make the mistake of falling for. Now, 2 more little bits of work and then we're done and then we can go to the Q&A. What is a learning or an insight that you gained today? What's one thing that you can take away with you based on today's session? Write that down. What is one tool you will implement and use? Is it the decision-making triangle? Is it Eisenhower's matrix? Is it the De Bono's 6 hats? How do you plan to make better decisions in the future? Are you slowing down? Are you speeding up? Are you employing toys? Are you gathering tools? Are you gathering context? Are you seeking counsel? Are you getting advisors? What are you doing to help you make better decisions in the future? Write down your answer to those 3. Thanks, Gerard. Now, lastly, today will be wasted if you have not committed to an action or a decision based on today's session. So what are you going to commit to and do? Give me a thumbs up if through this process you're clear now on how to make your decision or whether you've made the decision. If you've got an action, a concrete action that you're going to take, please share it in the chat box so that everybody else can see it. This is 1, holding yourself accountable for what you're going to do. This is 2, giving other people ideas of action they can take. Ross, data, great one. Chuck it in the chat box. What's the action you're going to take? What's the thing you're going to do differently? What are you committing to and doing as a result of today? Check that in the chat box. Hold yourself accountable.